Hey, what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my spoiler-free review of Things I Should Have Known by Claire Lizebnik. As a note, this review is being sponsored by HMH Teen, so of course thank you so much to HMH Teen for sponsoring this video, but as always, all opinions are entirely my own. So if you have not been actively watching my videos this summer, you wouldn't know that this book is a part of the Summer of Love campaign that I am working on with HMH Teen. For this campaign, I have already posted 2 reviews, one for Definitions of Indefinable Things by Whitney Taylor, and another for How to Make a Wish by Ashley Herring Blake. Today I am reviewing Things I Should Have Known by Claire Lizebnik, and the final review that is coming in the next few weeks is for But Then I Came Back by Estelle Laurie. So if you would like to learn more about this campaign or check out my previous videos, I will link all of that information in the description below, as well as a giveaway that HMH Teen is sponsoring where one winner is going to win all 4 of the Summer of Love books. So again, if you'd like to enter that giveaway and find out more information, that is going to be linked in the description. But today we are reviewing Things I Should Have Known by Claire Lizebnik, which is a book I really enjoyed. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars because it really was an addictive novel that had me wanting to keep reading all the way through. If you did not know, Things I Should Have Known follows our main character Chloe, who has a sister who is autistic named Ivy. Now Chloe is of the meddling type, and she really thinks that Ivy could use a boyfriend, whom she's already picked out to be a boy named Ethan, who is in Ivy's special needs class as well. So Chloe starts to set up Ivy and Ethan on some dates, but that comes along with a boy named David, who is Ethan's brother, that Chloe does not get along with whatsoever. And so throughout this novel, as the 4 of them start to grow closer and spend more time together, Chloe realizes some truths about herself, Ivy realizes some truths about herself, and it is a really fantastic novel about personal growth, about friendship, about making some difficult decisions in your life, and about sisterly and sibling love. I have also seen this book marketed as a retelling of Jane Austen's Emma. I have not read Emma. I know nothing about this book. The synopsis sounds similar, but I can't tell you how authentic of a retelling it is. As a YA book on its own, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, this review is spoiler-free, but I think it is very important for me to make a few notes and disclaimers in the beginning of this review for very specific reasons. So if you would like to just skip all of that and head on over to the spoiler-free review, you can head over to this time and it'll bring you right to all of my opinions on this book. But as this book follows 2 characters with autism, I am in the hot seat today. I am very uncomfortable to review this book because it is not something that I can personally speak on. Autism representation in literature is so new to me. This is one of the very first YA novels that I have read that feature a main character with autism. So I did not know too much going into this book about what representation should look like, so it's not really something I can speak on. I did try and reach out to the community and see what resources I could find about what is good representation for people with autism, what is bad, what do I need to look for going into this book. So if that's something that you would like to learn more about, I have linked some what I think to be really great sources in the description below. So to get that out of the way, I cannot speak for the autism representation, and I was really hoping that I could find some own voices reviews from people with autism who have read this book and their feelings on it. I couldn't find any at the moment. If I do, I will link them below as well, but it's just not something I can personally speak on, so the authenticity of the representation is not really something I'm going to be able to focus on in this review. Secondly, I know the use of language is an extremely important conversation going on right now with people with autism spectrum disorder, and so that's another reason why I was so uncomfortable going into this, because is it more appropriate for me to use autistic person or person with autism, because there are a lot of different opinions on either side. So for me personally, I contacted the author. I asked her how do her characters prefer to identify, and she said that Ivy and Ethan both prefer to use the language of I am autistic as opposed to I have autism. So when I'm referring to those individual characters, I will use that language just because it is their personal preference. And finally, I did want to make it clear that although I can't speak for the autism representation in this book, I do know for a fact that the author does have a son with autism, and she has published nonfiction works related to autism with a professional in the field. So I may not be that knowledgeable about it, but I can't speak for the representation, but the author definitely does seem to be knowledgeable about the subject she's working on. So without further ado, here is my review of Things I Should Have Known. So the first thing I want to say about this book is it really was addictive. The second I started it, I read like 50 to 75 pages in one sitting, which is totally not normal for me, but I just genuinely wanted to continue reading. I consider the writing of this book to be very typical, not in a negative way, like it wasn't distracting me from what I was reading, it wasn't like so unbelievably amazing that I need to rave about it, but it definitely pushed the story, which in my opinion is what the writing is meant to do. But there's just something about this book that made me want to keep reading. Like, I was so surprised at how invested I got with these characters, because I really wanted to know more about Ivy and Chloe's relationship, and I wanted to know more about Ivy and Ethan's relationship, and I wanted to know more about David and Chloe's relationship. There was just something propelling me to keep reading, and I think that's a really important quality in books. Now to talk about characters, we gotta chat about Chloe. I personally like Chloe as a character, but she definitely has her flaws. My first impression of Chloe is that she is this stereotypical, pretty, blonde, high maintenance, popular high school girl, but honestly by the end of the story, I was really wrong. I definitely think Chloe can be unlikable in some respects, especially in the beginning of the book because of how many decisions she makes for her sister. For example, throughout the book, I'm like, Chloe, why does Ivy need a significant other? Why can't it be a friend? If it is a significant other, why does it have to be a boyfriend? Why does it have to be somebody with special needs? And there are other points in the story where I feel like she does push Ivy to do certain things because she wants to, which I don't necessarily agree with, but nearing the end of the story, oh my god, that I love her character. In the very beginning of the book, somebody said something very stigmatizing against Ivy to Chloe, and initially she's like, that's not cool to say, but she doesn't pursue it because she doesn't want to be one of those girls. And when I read that line, I was like, we have some character development coming for us here. Even from the title of the book, we have things I should have known, and then it's crossed out to just say things I know. And it's just so obvious that this is a book about a lot of character development, about a lot of self-realization, and I think that was super evident in the book that made me really like Chloe. Throughout the novel, she learns to use her voice, she discovers who is the person that she wants to be, she makes some real decisions about the company she wants to keep in her life, and I think ultimately those are a lot of decisions that teenagers do have to make, and I really enjoyed watching her transformation. Chloe originally cares so much about her presentation towards others that it really shelters who she actually is. So throughout the story, she comes to understand her own personal values and lets that drive her in life as opposed to other people's perception of her, which I think is a really important message. Now, Ivy. I love Ivy. I think she was definitely my favorite character in the book. She is just so sweet and kind-hearted. She doesn't have a mean bone in her body. Like, I want to be best friends with Ivy. Ivy is just one of those people that really wants to find her place in the world, and throughout the course of Things I Should Have Known, she makes a lot of steps towards doing that. I think my favorite thing about Ivy, though, is that she has so many layers. She's a really well-developed character. She is not just Chloe's autistic sibling. One of the things I went into this book explicitly looking for to see if it was present or if it was non-existent was the concept of inspiration porn. Oftentimes in books featuring characters with autism, the main character is neurotypical and they have a sibling with autism that is really just used for that main character's growth, which is so wrong, but I genuinely do not feel like that was a present theme in this book. Like I said, Chloe does go through serious growth in this book, but Ivy does as well, and their personal growth is totally independent from one another. If there is a character that aids Chloe's development, it's David, because she sees the way that David is unapologetically himself and the way he carries himself, and she wants to emulate that because that is the person that she wants to be. Whereas Ivy goes through her own personal transformation, she discovers some truths about herself, but neither really has anything to do with each other. They're just siblings that love each other, and that's the dynamic I wanted to see. Additionally, Chloe does have some extra responsibilities in the house. Some of them do have to do with Ivy, but not at all did I feel like there was any kind of imbalance between their relationship. Like, it never felt like Ivy was being a burden to Chloe. It felt like a totally normal sister dynamic, and I really, really enjoyed that. These two characters genuinely love each other. They love spending time together, and it was so refreshing to see a sibling relationship like that, because so many times in literature we can have siblings who are just fighting with each other all the time. So one of my favorite things about the book was definitely the relationship between Ivy and Chloe. Now we're gonna talk about David, who is a character I surprisingly really, really enjoyed. I don't think a lot of people would like him, especially in the beginning. I was like, this guy is super freaking obnoxious. But again, throughout the story, everyone really has great character development, and the more I got to know David, the more I really enjoyed his character. He's really outspoken and, like I said, unapologetically himself, and I really admire that. Like, David will not take your shit. If someone is being rude, if you're being a dick, he's gonna call you out on that with no shame. And I think David does put up a wall sometimes and uses that lack of filter that he has as a kind of shield against others, but as he gets to know Chloe more, like, David helps Chloe and Chloe helps David, and he really learns to soften up a little bit and just all the dynamics in this book were so well done. So the final main character of this book is Ethan, who is David's autistic brother. And personally, I feel like I don't know Ethan as well as the other characters. We have so much more development on Chloe, Ivy, and David, and I feel like Ethan just wasn't as present. Although I don't have as strong as a connection with Ethan, I really loved his character. Like every time he popped up, I was smiling. I loved watching him fall for Ivy and like try to get her attention. He only ever has good intentions, and I really like that about him. Out of all four characters, Ethan is probably the least fleshed out, but I still think he's a good character that made great additions to the story, and I really liked his character arc as well. Now, like I said, I cannot speak for the autism rep in this book. I'm not going to. In my interpretation, it felt very respectful, and it seemed like the author was well informed with what is going on in the world today with people like Ivy and Ethan, and I genuinely enjoyed it, but I do acknowledge that I have a privilege of not having autism, and I might not have picked up any problematic content related to the representation, so I'm just making that clear. As I kind of alluded to in the beginning of this review, there definitely are the inclusion of microaggressions against people with autism. My mom is actually an aide for some of the students in my old high school that have disabilities or may have neurological disorders like autism, so I'm kind of used to a lot of the negative reactions that people have to people like Ivy and Ethan, and it is such a shame that like this type of stigma and discrimination actually exists. Although Chloe doesn't possess the courage in the beginning of the story to necessarily make a stand against what she believes in, throughout the story there are a lot of different scenes, whether it be in public, in family relationships, that have to do with prejudice against people with autism, and every single time it is made super clear that these are not ideals you should hold, this is wrong, and these sorts of actions and words and such should not be condoned. And I was really happy that like every single time these microaggressions were brought up, they were challenged, and that's really important to me. There are some scenes in public where people are showing some stigmatizing attitudes to Ivy and Ethan, and David will totally shut them down like I knew he would. But there are other scenes with David's stepmom, who is not here, Ethan's biological mother, where she definitely has some stigmatizing ideals. For example, she is an anti-vaxxer, and we have some great conversations about that in this book. So although I cannot speak on the autism representation, I tried to do my research. If there was anything that I had found to be problematic, I would absolutely share it with you guys, but ultimately I was happy with the execution to at least my interpretation in this story. The final thing I want to mention in this review is one I want to talk about it so badly, but just I can't for your personal reading experience if you're planning on reading this book. Essentially, there is a character who identifies as a part of the LGBTQIAP+ community. In this book, we have a character who comes out as gay through the pages of the book, and that's really all I want to say about it. I am personally a big fan of the idea that character sexualities are not spoilers, and I think we should totally normalize these conversations. But the way this book was constructed, I can't do it to myself to tell you how this plays out, because I think it was so perfectly written in the story. I will say I do not think it is used as a cheap plot twist. I think once this character does come out, so much of the book does make sense afterwards, and it really was premeditated. So I definitely loved this gay character as well. I just do not want to talk about it so much because I think not knowing really improved my reading experience, and I want to offer you guys that same opportunity. But that is really it for my review of Things I Should Have Known by Claire Lezebnik. I think it is just so raw and authentic, and it deals with a lot of important themes, not only just about people with autism, but as well as using your voice and becoming the person you want to be. Like, those are themes I really love to see in YA literature that I think all teens deserve to read. It's a really fabulous book. I'd highly recommend it, and definitely if you guys have any further information on this book in regards to the representation, if you have found any Own Voices reviews, or if maybe you can speak on the representation, I would really love to know your thoughts so I can include them to make this review as inclusive as possible. Thank you again to HMH Teen for sponsoring this review and for giving me the opportunity to read so many amazing books this summer. I'm really excited to share my review of But Then I Came Back by Estelle Laurie with you guys as well, and of course if you are interested in checking out more of the HMH Teen Summer of Love campaign and entering their super awesome giveaway, all of that information is in the description below. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!